we take the initiative. We are testing the limits of equipment designed for modern war in the harshest environment on Earth. From the air to the ground, across every domain of the battle space, nothing goes untested. Nothing goes underutilized. Our soldiers have expanded their capacity, not just to fight in the Arctic, but to think, maneuver, and win in conditions where others would hesitate. This division does not treat the Arctic as an obstacle. We treat it as an advantage, a proving ground, a message. To our allies, we are present. To our adversaries, we are prepared. When the call comes, the 11th Airborne Division will rise to the occasion. We will succeed.
All right, it's hard to follow your own video, so what are your questions? And that pretty much says it right there. If you want a glimpse into what fighting in the Arctic looks like, that's from this year's Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center exercise. It's our annual culminating training event that we host up in Alaska every year. It's multinational, it's joint, and it's always really, really cold. So the temperatures range from -20 to -40. One day it dipped down to -50 and even below that, at which point we tend to tell soldiers to get inside their 10-man tents and turn on the stove because it becomes just unsafe to live. But that's what we do. That's the environment that we operate in. I'm Major General John Cogbill, Commanding General of the 11th Airborne Division. I'm with Command Sergeant Major Dave Hanson. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today on the last day. So first of all, great endurance for still being here. We are the last Commander's Corner, so again, we appreciate bringing things home here for America's First Corps, for U.S. Army Pacific. By show of hands, who here knew that we had another Airborne Division in World War II other than the 82nd or the 101st? Okay, there's like 3 of you. That's good. I was probably one of them until I got told I was going to command the 11th Airborne Division. That's because there is no Band of Brothers for the 11th Airborne Division. There's some good docu-series about fighting the Pacific, but the history of the 11th Airborne Division is relatively unknown. Activated in 1943, fought exclusively in the Indo-Pacific theater, almost entirely in the Philippines. Multiple combat jumps to include Tagaytay Ridge, the most historic and daring prison rescue raid ever, liberating over 2,100 detainees. Also another combat jump, liberating Manila and being the first U.S. forces to occupy Japan after they signed their surrender on the USS Missouri. So it's a really fascinating history. The more I learn about it, the more I want people to know about it. So I just want to start with that and give you a little bit of historic context. The division was reactivated in 2022 under then Major General Brian Eifler. And so we're only 4 years on this run. But post-World War II, they moved to Fort Campbell. The Rocketsons, the 187th, broke off, fought in Korea as a regimental combat team, and then the division was reactivated again for Vietnam, where they pioneered the air mobile concept that Hal Moore in the 1st CAT Division made famous in We Were Soldiers. Then again, deactivated, here we are. And we have been reincarnated as not only an airborne division, but the Army's only Arctic division. In fact, we're the Department of War's only Arctic division. And that's a responsibility that we take very seriously. You may be asking yourself, then why are you at LANPAC? Well, it's because we're assigned to Indo-PACOM, and we are worldwide deployable. So there are We specialize in extreme cold weather, extreme cold temperature, high altitude and mountainous terrain. We are equipped for that, we're manned for that. And so that can take us anywhere in the Indo-Pacific. There are areas that qualify, but it can also take us elsewhere in the world. So Alaska is strategically located. If you're wondering why is the Army, why is the Department of War investing so much in what used to be kind of the fishing and hunting brigade up in Alaska and making this a go-to-war headquarters with real O-plan responsibilities globally, it's because of where we're located, for one. We are, as the announcer mentioned, we're the only joint forcible entry capability in Indo-PACOM. And by that I mean the ability to conduct direct delivery from Alaska anywhere in the Indo-Pacific and conduct an airborne assault. So just a little bit about us. We have an airborne brigade at J-Bear in Anchorage, and we have an air assault brigade up at Fort Wainwright. We also, on a period of continuous transformation, we had an Arctic Aviation Command, which is really just an attack and a lift battalion. We are now transforming and in the process of standing up a combat aviation brigade, which will be FOC next spring in May. On top of that, we've had a provisional sustainment brigade, or a support unit, that will be officially a division sustainment brigade this summer. And then we're building out and transforming the division as a unit of action with the IEW battalion, the single battalion, all the different things that you're seeing in the 25th ID or the 4th ID and other units across the Army. I will say that we are not a transformation contact division. For us, continuous transformation is a mindset, and we get after it because we know that's what our nation expects us to do. There's a lot of homegrown innovation efforts, and I'll talk about those more at the end. But we know that we have to be ready to do a multitude of missions. And again, going back to where we look at the world a little bit differently. We kind of look down on, from the North Pole perspective. And then you start to understand the importance of Alaska and the strategic location. As General Billy Mitchell said, the father of the modern Air Force, whoever owns Alaska owns the world. Because it is a power projection platform. And this just gives you an idea. You can't read this, but basically we can be within 90% of the industrialized world in 9 hours or less. And so these little arrows go out here to Moscow, under 9 hours, Berlin, Tokyo, Seoul, Beijing. It's pretty, our ability to project power is paramount, and which is why you've seen a lot of MILCON investment recently, and things that are on the horizon to increase our ability to outload. So when I served in Alaska 25 years, it was an airborne battalion task force. Right now we're talking about how do you get an airborne division to the fight. That means a new joint mobility complex. It means a heavy drop rig site, pallet processing sites, and a partnership with the Air Force, getting ourselves into the airplanes and into the tip kit so that we can get to where we need to be at the time of need. Now, talk about deploying combat power. We do have the ability to do that from Fort Wainwright as well, but we don't have quite the facilities that we have down at J-Bear. But if you look at, this is General Clark's concept of ready forward. You probably heard him speak about that. In fact, I think he's getting ready to keynote here at 11, so it's okay if you get up and walk out, because I would too. But he's going to talk about ready forward and what that means, and operation pathways, and the exercises that we do with our partners. Multitude of partners, people, partners, and prevailing. Those are his 3 priorities. And you do that for a lot of reasons. One, you've got to build trust, mutual trust, and interoperability with your partners. Okay, we've got to build real warfighting capability. But when we partner with our multinational partners, it gets us and our equipment west of the international date line. So if you see, we've got a home station up here in Alaska, but we've got Japan as one of our primary partners. We do 3 exercises alone in January. We're doing a Yamasakura CPX with them in September, followed by an Orient Shield. We've got Cobra Gold, we've got Utabas, another partner in India, where we do a lot of the high altitude and mountainous type training with our partners. Of course, Australia, Talisman Sabre, Indonesia, Super Garuda Shield, and the list goes on. Just for our airborne brigade alone, can you see a lot of parachutes on this picture? If you're closer, you can see it. Everybody wants an airborne assault as part of their exercise. I've got 1 brigade right now to be able to do that, plus the division headquarters. So they get spread pretty thin. You're talking about 9 exercises in the Pacific a year, plus the thing that we really optimize for, which is fighting in the Arctic. And so that's a no-fail mission, since we're the only ones that can do it. And so the snow starts to fall around October, and from October all the way through February, we're hitting it hard with our winter training progression. But during those other periods in the spring and the fall, we try to put as much combat power forward into the Pacific as we can. Okay, this is what, if you're here on the expo floor, this is probably interesting to you. I mentioned homegrown innovation efforts. We're not just out there making it up, we're focusing on priorities. There are capability gaps that we have to address when we're fighting in the Arctic. Because we have the 4 rules of the North. First of all, everything is harder in the Arctic. Okay? Everything breaks at 40 below. So your batteries stop working, your metal, your plastics start to break, your fuel becomes jelly, and you can't distribute bulk water or other things that you would normally be able to do without thinking out of the box and having some really creative solutions. Over the snow mobility stuff, and we'll talk about the different categories here in areas that we need help and areas that we're actively experimenting with. But at the center of all this is the Arctic soldier. Okay, our Arctic paratroopers that go out and fight the conditions that I mentioned. All right, so everything's harder, everything breaks at 40 below. Nobody's coming to save you, and winter's always coming. So although the snow is melting on the ground, we still have it on the mountaintops, and just about the time that snow line recedes to the top of the mountains, we're going to start seeing termination dust on the top of it again, and we're going to wash, rinse, repeat. So I'm going to turn it over to Command Sergeant Major Hanson to talk about the person at the center of this.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, and one of the things we pride ourselves on is our identity. And in this great division, we use ANGELS as our acronym, but the first one being Arctic Tough. As you can see, the trooper right here in the middle. So that's a mindset to be able to go out there and operate. And that's expected of every trooper in the division, to include myself and the commanding general. We got to be experts at night. I think everyone can agree. We've got to be extremely lethal at night, so night fighting. We got to be great teammates. It takes all of us out there, so that's both up, down to subordinates and lateral. Any questions so far on that? All right, we got to be experts at the fundamentals. The fundamentals are defined by PT, marksmanship, battle drills, mobility, which is crucial for us, and medical. Any questions on that one? All right, if we can do those things really, really well, we're going to be lethal, which is absolutely critical. And then the S is we got to be standard bearers. Everybody's got to know and enforce the standards, and I'd argue it's absolutely crucial up there in this environment. We cannot take shortcuts, because if we take a shortcut to a standard, we could lose digits, limbs, and God forbid a life out there. So we take that very serious. So hopefully for all our industrial partners out there, that helps frame that centerpiece right there, which is that Arctic Trooper.
All right, thanks, Sergeant Major. So I mentioned JPMRC, big culminating exercise in the winter. Last JPMRC, we conducted 43 separate experiments using new technology. Anything from power generation, battery optimization, and battery use, battery longevity, Arctic sustainment. I mentioned some of those challenges earlier. Small UAS and counter UAS. The Joint Pacific Alaska Range Complex is 2.5 times the size of the National Training Center at Fort Irwin. We have very permissive airspace because there's just not a lot of traffic up there, and we can do a lot of things. So DIU is a regular customer. They bring a lot of industry partners up there to test out new capabilities. I've told Matt Ross and JTF 401, like if it's not real until it works in Alaska. We've got the soldier-driven innovation, which is some of our most interesting stuff. We're standing up right now 2 Arctic Innovation Labs. If you're interested later, I have a business card with a QR code on the back that'll take you to my innovation team. We've got because we are geographically distributed, we've got 350 miles between J-Bear and Fort Wainwright. So I've got an Arctic Innovation Lab down south and then one up north. And the types that they're working on the same things that the rest of the Army is working on, but we're not trying to figure it out by ourselves. So first-person view drones, using additive manufacturing for long lead time parts, CNC production. So, and then also our digital targeting exercises. So CJAD C2 is something I spoke about the other day on the AI panel, but that's something we're looking at too. We are not a TIC division. We don't have next gen C2 yet, but we know it's coming. And so we're building a data literate workforce. We're using, we started our own Angel Strike exercise to use existing exercises, joint partners, multinational partners that are in the field to establish tactical data links and start to pass targets. So we can shorten kill chains, we can increase decision dominance across all war fighting functions. And so that's something I'm happy to talk more about. And then of course, with that and the power generation, we're doing power generation with the Army Modernization Enterprise right now. So you've heard of PIT, the Pathways Innovation and Technology, as part of T2Com. We are the lead for the Army for power generation. Because if it works in Alaska, it'll work anywhere. We got to think expeditionary, because we could end up somewhere on the fight defending NATO's northern flank, or it could be somewhere in the Indo-Pacific, but you still need reliable power. We want to minimize the soldier's load, so we don't want to go on the field with a rucksack full of batteries, because your Arctic gear takes up a lot of room as well. But when you're talking about generating power, you got to worry about your signature in the Arctic, because Arctic is really cold, and humans burn hot, and so do our machines, and so we're taking the lessons learned from Ukraine, modern day battlefields, to realize how do we do that? How do we make our command posts smaller, more capable? How do we have the ability to compute at the edge and run our AI systems? But how do we do it in a way where we're not going to be discovered and immediately destroyed? It's a challenge. So I know I've already talked to some of you folks out here on the floor about how we get after that. So I think that's probably a good place to stop. We're about at time, and then I'll open it up to questions. Yes, sir. In the green shirt.
Sir, Deputy Orson, appreciate you being here and your comments. A question about transformation. The Army going to the brigade combat teams. How is that influencing you in terms of equipping your operations? I know you're replacing the SUSV, that sort of thing. How are you handling that?
That's a great question.
Great question.
Probably should have covered it. So the SUSV, which is what we were driving around, a Swedish vehicle. See my Swedish partner back here. Has evolved into the Cat V, which is a much more, also a Swedish vehicle, a much more capable cold weather all-terrain vehicle. We currently have 34 of them in the division. You saw them on the video. And if you want to play the video on silent behind, you can, I don't care. But you can kind of see those things in action. When we talk about open snow mobility, they are the workhorses. That and CH-47s are the workhorses of the 11th Airborne Division. So we went from 34, the acquisition objective was 184. The Chief of Staff of the Army and the DA staff came out to JPMRC in February and said, you need more. You need these down at the platoon level, so now we're going up to 236 for the division. That's going to be fielded over time. So there's a pipeline of production thing that we have to wait for, but the intent, the current fielding timeline will have our Airborne Brigade at JBER fully equipped with Cat Vs by JPMRC 2602. So next February, and then we can test. So we're validating the Arctic MTO right now. That's we're working with the DA staff to document all this. On top of that, you mentioned MBCT conversion. This summer, our IBCTs become MBCTs. So the CAV squadrons go away, they become infantry battalions. We're bringing back the 1st Battalion, the 511th Parachute Infantry Regiment from World War II. Pretty excited about that. But it means we're getting the ISV. But ISVs don't work that well in Alaska. It's like driving a Jeep with the top down when it's 20 or 40 below. It doesn't work. But there are, I mentioned we are assigned to Indo-PACOM. There's a lot of training that we do in the Pacific. We can go to war if called to do so. So we will maintain a fleet so that we can train and build readiness during the months where it makes sense.
Thank you for being here and thank you for your service. So I'm going to change it a little bit. So we were talking about fueling the soldiers. How do we go about fueling in that weather when it comes to the food service, nutritionist meal?
That's a great question. Yeah. So we have the Arctic MRE. Sorry, Major, how many calories are we talking about?
So what we look at with the data and planning is 5,000 calories a day for a male, about 3,800 for female soldiers. And that's just to maintain. That's not even thriving, but.
we typically are pushing our own sustainment. And I've got some sustainers in the audience here that can probably answer better than I can, but I'll tell you, like, if you can't pull it in an Accio sled, the chances are it's not going to get to you. There's no contractors out there, you know, in the waist deep snow doing sustainment. So that's one of our innovation priorities is sustainment. So it's great to have a big white MRE that has 5,000 calories, but a lot of that stuff got to add water to it. In order to have water, you have to be able to melt the water. Okay, so when it's 40 below, we deliver bulk water in giant ice cubes because it's more efficient. So you got to be able to heat it somewhere, which means you got to have a fuel that's actually going to work at 40 below. You got to have a stove that's not going to compromise your position. So one of the things we test at JPMRC were these squad stoves, where you can cook about a squad. And if you have a couple of them, you could do a company at a time, which you're never going to do because you're never going to have a company all in the same place at the same time. So squad is probably about the biggest we would go realistic, because that's going to again have to be put into a sled, and that sled's competing with your Accio tent, your squad stove, you know, the heater, your fuel, your water, all those other things. And it's literally, you can see in some of these videos, it's literally soldiers pulling it, or you hook it up to your Cat V and let that thing pull it. Or we get some sort of autonomous system that can trail behind you.
There's no machines.
Leader follower type. So that is because you know, soldiers will, like any other soldier, they march on their stomachs, right? And so we ask them to do some incredibly difficult things. And as long as they know there's going to be a hot meal and a place to get warm, and that they can kind of rest up, and they're willing to do it. And that, I mean, Arctic tough is real. And that same toughness can apply to the jungles of the Indo-Pacific. But yeah, they got to know that there's some sort of hot chow waiting for them, because your body just needs it. And you're burning through so many calories, and you got to warm it back up.
Sir, you mentioned advancements in power or energy. I'm interested in what you're seeing in the Arctic that's working for you, and what your expectation or request of industry would be.
So we are working with some industry partners right now. It just depends on what we're trying to power. Right, you know, the one that comes to mind are your radios or your drones. So these drones that the 101st or 25th or some of these other units are using, they come to the Arctic and they last for about 5 minutes. So normally you may have 45 minutes of airtime, they may get you 5 minutes. And so some basic soldier ingenuity and some things that we're doing with industry, but how do you keep that battery? You just got to keep the battery warm so you can keep a soldier warm. So we've had soldiers wrapping them in insulation, which gives more weight to the drone, but they're lightweight solutions to do it. And just some incremental changes there where we can get it up to where it's actually useful. Otherwise, why do you want to carry a quadcopter on your back or your sled if you only get 5 minutes of airtime out of it? So, and then there's things that we're doing to minimize our noise signature and our heat signature to power small command posts. Then there's also things you can do where you can power off your vehicle. So I know with the ISV, the new variant coming out, the heavy, you'll be able to do a lot of that power for a company, maybe even a battalion TAC, instead of carrying all these additional batteries or jerry cans full of fuel. But if you wanted, I'll give you one of my cards and you can talk about innovation too. There are some pretty awesome experiments, and the best place to do it, not just the JPMRC experiment or exercise in February, but starting off from that whole training progression, Brigade FTX in November, and working our way all the way through that. There is going to be an Arctic Warfighting Symposium post JPMRC in March of next year, so just if you want to come up. We do an industry day, we do like an innovation expo, we do a multinational DB day, and we do a US only DB day. But this year, for the first time, we're going to have an Arctic Warfighting Symposium, so think mini LANPAC, mini maneuver center. I mean, when I say mini, like this is our first time doing it, but it's to bring in some of the industry partners, bring in our academic partners from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, who have one of the most robust small UAS systems in the world, because in the environment that they operate in. So great academic partners there that we formalized through Kratos, and that we're continuing to grow, potentially through the Paddles Pathfinder program.
Hey, good afternoon, sir. Daryl Wolford, Soldier Medical Devices at the Fort Detrick, Maryland. I guess my question is, what are your most critical medical capability gaps, and what are the greatest opportunities for us as the material developers to provide scalable, sustainable, and operationally relevant solutions to the force?
I'd say come to Alaska and see it for yourself, because we run some some amazing
Good.
Arctic medical training. The first thing you do is how do you keep a patient's body temperature stable at the point of injury when it's 40 below? So you can't just rip the the first thing they do is they cut all your clothes off, right? Start sticking IVs into you, and then they put you on a litter and carry you away or a Cogbill. You do that to a soldier in the Arctic, now you've got a new problem. You've got frostbite and hypothermia, and you're going to die. The blood will stop flowing.
Yep.
So how do you keep them warm at the point of need? So there's all these innovative solutions about zip-up bags and insulating and these little containers like these sleds that you put them on the back of snow machines and quickly evacuate. You're not blowing a casualty on a Cogbill. You get them on a snow machine on a little sled behind it, and you evac them to your roll 1, your roll 2, roll 3, which are also things that have to be mobile to be able to move over the snow. How do you keep the blood from freezing? How do you keep platelets and everything? Like, I can go on and on. I'm not a doctor, but it's extremely hard to sustain life in the Arctic when somebody's been injured. And so that is a big growth industry for us. And some of those Arctic medical courses that we run, that we bring in there, it's not just 11th Airborne Division. We bring in soft partners, multinational partners. If you want to get the POI for that, I can give you a card and put you in contact with someone to tell you exactly the type of thing that they're training.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sir, Brian Weinberg, having a unique mission that you do and not being a tech, how are you generating your requirements and pushing those up so that we can see those and help you out?
So, one, we're communicating with our higher headquarters. So I work for General McFarland, who works for General Clark, who are very, I tell them all the time what we're working on, what our gaps are, and they can look across the force and they can say, hey, 4th ID is doing this, why don't you try that? 25th ID said, hey, come over to Lightning Labs and we'll help you build FPV drones. 101st Airborne reached out and sent us some parts to build. So there's that kind of just lateral collaboration, but then we're also connected to the modernization enterprise. In terms of this PIT that I talked about, so Pathways Innovation Technology. So there's a team, there's an 06 that just contacted me this morning. They're coming up next week. They're going to talk about power generation. They're going to talk about soldier systems, and they're taking that back. So PEO Soldier is going to make some big purchase decisions. But I said, whatever you do, don't buy anything that hasn't been tested in Alaska in the winter, because the soldiers won't trust it, they won't wear it, and it'll end up in somebody's wall locker and be a waste of money. So there's that. The AAC, soon to be Combat Aviation Brigade, they're talking to Fort Rucker. All of our helicopters have skis on them. They have survival pods and bug out pods, basically, for our aviators. If they were to have a hard landing somewhere out in the interior of Alaska, they've got to be able to sustain life themselves. So everything's different, everything's harder, everything takes longer, and all those things. But I'll tell you, the one-stop shop, if you really want to know, what do soldiers need, what does fighting in the Arctic look like, come up, book a ticket, come to Fairbanks in February to see it for yourself. Because you step out of the airport, and you take that first breath, and all your nose hairs freeze, and you cough involuntarily, and you're like, I am in a different place right now. All right, and then you go to open the door to your rental car, and your hand sticks to the door, and you kind of pull it away real quick, and you realize, oh, I should have a glove on, I should probably have a hat. And then you think about the soldiers that are out there for 10 to 14 days continuously, and how do you operate in that environment? So come see it.
I was gonna mention too, we leave the skis on year round because in the summer we have the muskeg as well. So another mobility challenge.
Okay, I think, I know we're about out of time. Okay, I'll take a couple more questions if you have them. If not, we'll be up here. We can have a one-on-one before I scoot out to go listen to General Clark put a bow on this thing. But for those who came, appreciate it. Like I said, open invitation. We've got some cards over here. Captain Law can hook you up. Scan the QR code and come visit Alaska. Real friends visit us in the winter in Alaska.